Hello degenerates and welcome back to another Smash Stories video. Been a while since I've done one of these, but I did want to get back on this as there is a very big purpose for me to complete all of these. So just as a reminder for where we were before, if you haven't watched all my previous parts, I do highly recommend on checking out all of those so you can be up to date on all the events that have led up to this very point that we're about to discuss. Just because there is quite a bit of history, especially like some of like the biggest moments. I talked about Genesis 4, which is basically where the entirety of the Duck Hunt being meta relevant kicked off, and then CEO Dreamland, which is probably the most significant event for Duck Hunts outside of Genesis 4, but I argue it's kind of the most essential, most important one to the entirety of just the Duck Hunt lore. But before we do get into the rest of this video, I do want to remind you guys, if you want to support the channel, if you check the link in the description, you will see a link for the Teespring store that we have, and we do have these masks if you do want to get them. It is carried by dinner, and there's a variety of colors. I believe there's 4 different ones, but here's the white and the blue one. They are fabulous little things if you want to see what the size is like. Nice, flexible, and it's got a lot of room to grow on it too. So if you do find yourself in need of more masks, that is an option that you can do, and if you get that, it'll help support the channel and support any future endeavors that we have on here. So just want to make sure I've got the right things. I do. Good. So the next part that we're going to be talking about in the timeline of things is going to be from CEO Dreamland all the way to GTX, as I feel that's kind of the next chapter here. This section is very much the middle of Duck Hunt being in the meta, as I wouldn't really say there was anything like super significant that happened during this time, but it's worth going over so you just kind of have an idea for the progress of everything. So this was pretty much the brunt of the year in 2017. So this is going to be from March, and we'll even talk about we'll talk about from March to October. After that is kind of, I think like after that is probably when we'll get into the end of it, as you can kind of combine the last part into basically when Duck Hunt finally came into just full like prominence and relevance at that time. So 2017 was kind of an interesting year. It was definitely the time when I started working with Reddit the most, and that is where basically my job as being a sponsor of the Duck Hunt community really just took its full form there. So at this time, Reddit was really the only Duck Hunt that was doing a lot. For example, I'll kind of show off some things that were going on. So Raito, we're going to be, once again, we're going to be looking at CEO Dreamland all the way to GTX. So throughout this time, he wasn't exactly getting like top 8 outside of like weeklies. At the nationals that he's going to, he was getting anywhere from like 17th to 9th. Which unfortunately, like at all like the bigger events, 13th was really the best that he ended up doing after CEO Dreamland at the major events. So for example, here you can see Japan Major, 17th, Naruto Saga was 13th, CEO 2017 was 13th, and then Umaburo was actually the one outlier where he got a 9th, Arm Saga was 17th, Evo was 17th, and then GTX went on a 13th. I forget what Karisuma is. I'm not sure if that's just like a weekly or if that's like one of the bigger events. And if we take a look at like all the other smashers at that time, so like Wisdom hadn't really done anything. In fact, GTX was really like the first one that he went to. The other ones were just like online things. And then like his locals there. Yusan, unfortunately, after Genesis 4, he didn't really do much. Sumabato was a big one. So, you know, he did get stuff there, but kind of after that, it was just a bit more of a drop off and him not attending as much, you know, 33rd, 28th, but like nothing nearly as good as like his initial run, as you can kind of see here. Just didn't practice as much, and he decided to focus a lot more on school, which, you know, obviously it makes sense to do that. Over in America, unfortunately, there wasn't really anything too eventful happening because Danny Penguin, like pretty much he went to CEO Dreamland, which I did talk about in the last video, but that was kind of like the last major event. He did just roll with it where he did get 4th, which that was really good. And then, you know, he would end up going again to SmashCon and Super Famicom, but we haven't gotten there yet, so we won't talk about that. Though actually, I guess that was the one event that's not on here that I do need to talk about. Though I do have to say, there wasn't really anything super impressive that happened in terms of Duck Hunt over at SmashCon. Like, this was basically the best representation that we had. Ozone, he was just kind of starting to get into things. So you can see here, like 33rd at Frostbite, Midwest Mayhem 17th, CEO 65th, and GTX 49th. And then Brood was also kind of slowing down too, like, really, really good early on, and then Genesis 4, and then from there on, it was like kind of 13ths were the best they would do, except this 1/7 at Umabura. But overall, just kind of consistently just there in the middle, and he wouldn't really budge out of that at that point. So at this time, Raito was kind of at the forefront for really pushing the meta, but again, kind of having a lot of difficulties like really breaking that barrier. And at this point, everybody knew that he was a good player and he was capable of beating everybody. It's just that he kind of needed to push himself a little bit more just to get over that hurdle. And it's honestly kind of insane just how much he was traveling. So like that was kind of an overview of what was going on in the US and in Japan. But like to give you an idea of like how often he was traveling. So obviously Genesis 4 in January was the first time we traveled. So that was in January. And then the next few months he was still back in Japan. Then April he came for CEO Dreamland, went back to Japan. Then June was the next time that he ended up coming to America, which was for Nairo Saga. And then what we ended up doing there is I just told Raito that he should just probably stay over at my place, and just sort of in between. So basically after that happened, then there's the 1 week period where CEO happened, then a week after. So he stayed there for that. And then he went back to Japan, and then he came back again for Arm Saga. So that was 4 times, which was in July. So 1 month afterwards. And then, I think from there, I think he did like a little like mid-break point where he came to my place, and then he went over to, actually no, I think he went straight to Evo afterwards. Yeah, so he went to Arm Saga, then he went straight to Evo afterwards. So that was just all one trip. So that was four times right there. Went back to Japan, and then he came back to GTX over in September. So in total, he did like 5 trips during that entire time. And not to mention, like, he spent like multiple weeks during like 3 of those trips, like doing like extra things, just getting from one event to the next one. So that was kind of a lot. And if you've ever like done those trips from America to Japan, they're brutal. Like, you got to deal with like a lot of jet lag and everything. And it's honestly impressive how well they can play considering all of those stipulations. Normally they'll get here like the day before and then they're going to go right to playing. Honestly, don't really know how they do that. So at this point, what we were doing in the meta was we were just kind of doing a lot of fine tuning in terms of just the way that Duck Hunt was being played. And specifically for Raito, we were looking at how to beat specific players, as that was kind of the major focus that we had to really consider at this point. So let's talk about that. So we're going to be going in order of the tournaments themselves. So the after CEO Dreamland, first one was like Umabur Japan Major. So over here, from what I remember, he was able to pick up some good ones. He did get knocked into losers fairly early. Where here he was able to beat Hikaru, but then just kind of lost right after that. And we'll go real quick to see who he lost to. Yanko, so unfortunately I have no idea who that is. And then just went right to it. So, overall got 17th there, so completely respectable, but nothing to really write home about. Didn't really pick up any big wins there either. Next up, what was going to be Redacted Saga, for the best way to put it, where over here he was able to get 13th, so he did slightly better. He was able to pick up some fairly good wins, like Exax, pretty good player at the time. Then he was able to be quick as well, which, that was a really, really good ZSS. And I think it's Germany's where he's from. And then from there, he ran into Elegant, where he had a really close nail-biter set with Elegant, which that was a really good one to watch. And then him versus Ranai was a very legendary set as well. One of the most clutch comebacks of all time. And then he fought Samsora, which was another like nail-biting set, but Samsora was just able to eat it out. So with all of these like whenever Ryder was just playing, like he would always do really, really well against all these players, but a lot of the time it just ended up being like these best of fives that would just like come down to the very, very last moment. Sometimes he'd win it, but sometimes he just wouldn't. So, you know, really good at adapting. His notes were paying off, but like he just wasn't consistently getting over the bridge at that point. Next up was CEO, which, you know, it was really nice to come back to the whole Orlando venue and everything. And kind of hard to tell, but this was Captain Zach over here, just a secretary. So Zach was actually somebody that he would always have a very hard time fighting. He had a very hit or miss record with Bayos. Certain Bayos he did very well against. Other ones would just kind of like run all over him. But that was just kind of like a little bit more indicative of the matchup itself. And certain playstyles he was good against. Other ones it'd be a bit harder for him. So I think that was like the first time that he really fought a good Bayo there, and it's just like he knew that he needed to work a lot more on that matchup. But after that, picked up some good wins. Deluxe Menu, very, very good Bowser player, was able to beat him fairly cleanly. I remember after this set finished, Duck's Fight, he said his character's just absurdly broken. He said it with a curse word, but for YouTube algorithm's sake, we're not gonna say it. And then he did fight Lade, Kool-Aid. Did very well. Like, I think his Sheik just took one. I think he beat his Sheik pretty cleanly, and then his Pac-Man took one game, and then he was just like able to take it from there. So, you know, good wins over there, just kind of showing like consistently how good he was against like players in general, and like kind of how he was kind of like at a little bit of a higher echelon. Then he beat Mr. R, which that was really, really big. That was like the first, that was like one of the few really big wins that he got here. And then Dabuz. So, you know, Dabuz was the one that slayed him back at CEO Dreamland, where he did a pretty close set. And then again, brought it to game 5 here, but just wasn't able to close it out at the very end. And that's how his run ended here. And then once again, this one was a 13th place. So Dabuz at this point was like, that was the player that we really needed to beat. And that would be the one that we would be focusing most of our attention on at this point. As I mentioned before, he was like very diligent and had like these huge just boxes of notes here in order to just like pages of notes just to fight these different players and just to fight these characters. So with the next event that we would see Dabuz at, that was like the one that we knew like, okay, we're all going to get together and just like try to figure out how to beat this guy, because that was really the big issue that we were having. But CEO, this was actually a really fun event in general for us. So this was like one of the big Duck Hunt meetups. So over here we had Ozone, we had Stay, we had Paris, me, and I want to say Afro was there as well. I could be wrong about that one. But overall, just a really nice event. I'm trying to see if I have any photos from... Oh, here we go. So these photos in particular from this one. Okay, so Afro was not at this one. It was just, it was Chocobro, Ozone, Stay, me, Righto. That's who it was. I think Stay had to leave in this photo. But basically, if you look at Duck Hunt Dinner 2018, that's actually based off of this restaurant right here. I'll show it off. Basically, whenever CEO was done, this is the restaurant that we would go to, just because it's a really nice atmosphere. It's open till 2 a.m., so we don't really have to worry in terms of like time and all that stuff. Sort of see the resemblance there, but I'll have to show like a different picture of that. So that, at least with that tournament, that was just kind of that was sort of just basically the restaurant of, if you ever go to CEO and it's going to be a Duck Hunt event, or I guess a K-Rool event in the future, this will probably be the restaurant that we'll end up at once the entire tournament's over. Really nice place, really fun and everything. And I remember I did change Ozone's mind there about like food there. So that was kind of a nice one. So that was Righto's second time going there. But overall, that was the first time Ozone met Righto, so we kind of learned a lot from that. From what I remember, let me see if they have Ozone's placement there. I don't think they do. So now I have... Okay, so Ozone got 65th there, so he was just about to make it out of pools there. So that was the best that the American Duck Hunts did there. So I forgot who he lost to. Might have been like Fallon or Tyrant or something like that. But this was kind of like the big thing that we had right here. So after this, the next big Duck Hunt meetup that we had was that was going to be SmashCon 2017. But let me see in terms of the timeline where we're at. So CEO was in June. Then we had Umabura, which I think I have that listed over here. Yeah, so this one at Umabura 27, he did get 9th. So this was actually like a really, really good power up for him considering just the loss that he had at CEO. So basically, I think these were same tiered events. It was either this was an A and CEO was an S, or they were both A's. I think CEO was an S, Umabura was an A. So beat Philip, which that was a really good Mario player at the time. Then he lost to Kirihara, which they were training buddies. So it's kind of expected for that one to go like pretty close to the wire there. Let me see if I can find Raito's path from here. Oh god. Okay. Oh wow, he actually got really far just off that one. So then from there, he was able to beat Umeki. I remember in Smash 4, he had a really, really good record against Umeki. Almost never lost to him. Beat Leah, and then lost to Choco. And if you don't know, Choco is like a top 5 player back in Japan, so really respectable loss to have. And, you know, ZSS was kind of crazy in that game too. So yeah, that was another pretty good performance from him over there. And then we get to Armsog, which this definitely had like one of the most heartbreaking sets out of all of them. So one thing that was kind of nice about this one was that he was able to beat Lima, which, as I mentioned before, it was like after losing to Captain Zack 0-2, this was really nice to see, just kind of seeing him improve in fighting Bayonetta. Which that's actually something I can talk about right now, is Duck Hunt was actually one of the reasons why he was just so meta relevant was just how good he was at fighting the top tiers. Like, the thing about Smash 4 that really sucked was that a lot of characters got gate kept super, super, super hard by all the DLC characters. So this includes Cloud and Bayonetta in particular were like the biggest offenders. Like Cloud just invalidated so many characters that like it really sucked. The one thing that's kind of funny was like Cloud was arguably a -2 matchup for Duck Hunt, but it's just that the saving grace about fighting Cloud was that you could always rely on your punish game on him being good enough that as long as he found those few openings, you could just kill him and that would carry you through. And the fact that the game was 2 stocks just kind of emphasized that even further. So it was hard, but it was always a doable matchup. But like Diddy Kong, it was either even or we just slightly beat him, but I think that one was even. Bayonetta was slightly her favor with just how skewed the punish game was in her favor, but like legitimately it was really hard for her to fight us in neutral. Like it was really hard for her to get in because we had like Can and Gunman there that would just keep her back really nicely, and Bayonetta had like one of the most oppressive planks out of the entire cast. Like if she was there on ledge, there wasn't too much you could do, and you could do this crazy stuff to like extend your invincibility at ledge as well. So most characters just could not fight that at all, where because we had Shield Can at ledge, we were one of the few characters that could prevent her from planking, and that was a huge benefit that we had to ourselves there. So that being able to fight Diddy Kong were just like some of the reasons why we actually did really good in the meta, and the more that we developed those tactics was kind of more the reason why that you would see Duck Hunt slowly climb his way up the rankings, which that's actually something I can show you. Nice thing about Smash Wiki is they did store all the tier lists that we have, so we can kind of show you here. So this was February 1st, 2016. So this was before Duck Hunt before like Raito Brood really did anything relevant in America. As you can see, G tier, which is a low tier. Like basically people thought he was as good as King DDD. If you're kind of confused by this Marth placement, there was one buff that made Marth really good. Marth and Lucina really good. And before that patch happened, they weren't too great. And also not all DLC was in there. By this tier list in August, that's when we had both Cloud and Bayonetta. This was after the Bayonetta nerf, so at first Bayonetta was the best character, then the nerfs happened and people weren't as sure until people figured out how to get those 0-to-death combos. And oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention. While we didn't win against Sheik, we did good against her. So that was another thing that was nice. Kind of the same thing against Rosalina. While she could pocket the can, she couldn't pocket Gunman. So that way you could always make it like an RPS on how she would pocket, how she would do the gravitational pull on it. So that was good. We also did good against Sonic. We did good against Mario. In fact, we probably beat Mario. We either beat Mario or that was even. Ryu we beat. ZSS, slightly her favor, even. I would say Fox probably slightly beat us, but it slightly beat her even. Pikachu was a pretty even matchup as well. It was just, that was kind of the reason why we did really good. So yeah, as you can see here, still like low tier here, being below Pac-Man and all that stuff. Again, this is before that one breakout tournament with Raito and Brute and all that. And then March. So March happened, so this tier list happened right before CEO Dreamland happened. CEO Dreamland happened in April. And then the next one didn't come out until the end of the year. So at that point, Duck Hunt jumped from 37 all the way to 30. So 7 tier placements, went from like the bottom of the list to the very, very top of, I think this was considered mid-tier at the time. And basically, I think that was the final. Yeah, this ended up being the final list, but it definitely could have gone on a little bit further than this. It was kind of a premature end as the game did go on for another full year. But yeah, pretty much all because of Raito's efforts this one year, he was able to jump 7 places in the tier list. And if they decide to do another backroom one, you'd probably see him get probably somewhere around where like Olimar is. That's kind of like where we felt. It's like anywhere from the Mega Man to the Olimar area. That's sort of where we felt that he was. So yeah, let's get back to Arm Saga. So Arm Saga beat Lima, so that was very important in terms of just like establishing how well Duck Hunt could fight against Bayonetta. Unfortunately, lost to 0 there, which that has like one of the sickest clips of all time. But fortunately, it was Raito getting dunked on there, but he was able to take that one game. And then after that, I think he ran into Abadango. Yeah. So unfortunately, there's a couple times Raito fought Abadango, and they're training buddies, so it really sucks that they had to knock each other out at some really big events. So Arm Saga was one of them. And the next one that happened at was actually Evo. So this one was actually another Duck Hunt meetup. Over here at Evo, there was me, we had AK9, Bear, and I want to say it was Wisdom that was here. Actually, no, I don't think Wisdom was at this one. Yeah, Wisdom unfortunately wasn't at this one. So these were all the Duck Hunts here. Me, AK9, Bear. Had a pretty good time there overall because that was a very fun Evo to watch. But yeah, so Raito at this event beat Meteor, then beat Rich Brown, which from what I remember, those were pretty clean in his favor. Didn't really struggle too much with those. I just realized this is not a match critique. So one thing that was kind of different about the way that Evo was with us compared to the other events that we had, except for the ones I wasn't at. I should clarify. The events that I wasn't at, obviously the Japan ones because I hadn't gone yet. I was not at any of the 2GG ones, so that did include Nairo Saga, and I wasn't at Arm Saga. So basically we weren't housing him and we weren't doing like the full like Duck Hunt houses there. And then at Evo, he actually wasn't with us. So we actually didn't work with him too much there. He was kind of just with all the Japanese players there, grinding with them, which it makes sense. You have access to a lot better matchup experience over there than you would have with just us, and probably could just grind out a few more notes there. But Raito versus Conga. So for those of you who don't know, like DK was a very, very good matchup for us in this game. It's just that DK always had Ding Dong, which was ridiculous. And Conga, one of the absolute best players at exploiting this. Unfortunately, this was an off-stream match, and I don't think we have any recordings of this. But this was one of the most tense, like down to the very wire. After this set was done, Raito was visibly shaking. Like he could not just hold his hand still at all. And like Conga was also playing shaky too towards the end of that. Like he was mad nervous against that DK. I don't think I've ever seen Raito as visibly shook as that one set was compared to any of the rest for his entire career that I've been at personally. It's just like that was one of the most intense sets that I've ever seen, and I hope I'm able to find some footage of it eventually, just because it's just like all the emotions around that thing will just like tug at your heartstrings, and it's like your heart's just gonna want to just belch out there. So that one was crazy. Raito versus Ken, I think that one was pretty close, but obviously it's Evo best of 3, so it's not like he really had too much of a time to make a comeback there. And then once again, he got double eliminated by both Japan, so Raito and Abadango. So it was just like really, really unfortunate placements there. And then I think Ken would end up going to top 8 there, and he did really, really good at this Evo from what I remember. So that was kind of the end of that one. Nothing too significant there. And we finally get to GTX, which is basically going to be the bulk of the discussion here in terms of in-depth discussion. So GTX was a really weird event. And honestly, it's kind of one of those that I hope somebody does a documentary on, just because of how strange the whole thing was. So GTX's whole shtick was that this was going to be a long-standing major that was going to have the biggest financial support out there. And they did deliver on in terms of just like how much money that they had. So in total, $30,000 for Melee, $30,000 for Wii U. And they basically had, I think it was like $50,000. I think it was $1 million in prizes in total for all the events they had. And some of these just didn't have like anybody there. Like Guilty Gear Rev 2, nobody was playing. Injustice, no one was playing. MVCI, no one's playing. Street Fighter 5, I think had like 30 entrants. So it's easy money if you entered those. League of Legends, I don't even think they had enough people to do an event. Like, I think it was just like, yeah. They literally they did not have enough people sign up to get a bracket started. That's how empty a lot of these things were. But it was easy free money. And this was the first event that that Raito actually got a payout from that wasn't a weekly. Because at CFL SmackDown, he won those. So he got money from that. But for major tournaments, this was the first time that he ever got paid. So that was the thing. Like, they advertised it as this big event. They wanted to like get at least 1,000 entrants for Wii U and Melee combined, I think. But in total for the whole event, they only got 744. But it was just like the marketing was weird for it. The people themselves were kind of very out of touch. But the biggest thing that this event suffered from was an oversaturation of events. Like, there was an A tier and an S tier event like every single weekend, and a lot of Smash 4 players had to decide which A or S tier they wanted to go to, and they just kind of suffered from burnout as well. So it was just kind of weird to say, but like there was an unhealthy amount of tournaments going on, and like 2GG was like one of the biggest culprits of that, as like they kind of had their A and S tier tournaments like every single weekend. So people were always going out there, and they were always pulling attendees away from anything else that could have possibly started up. So that was kind of one of the biggest misfortunes that this event ran into. And the other thing too is just some behind the scenes things just didn't really work out correctly. Their commentator lineup, besides like the people that commentated like top 8, top 16, was also not good. They had like a lot of local commentators, and it really did come through with like a lot of the pools in top 48. It was not up to par with what you would want out of an event like this. I offered to commentate, but unfortunately I didn't get the gig at all. And it definitely kind of suffered for that. But in terms of the event itself, it was actually a lot of fun. I don't have a single negative thing to say about the overall experience of being there. Salt Lake City was a nice city to walk around. So for a tournament, it wasn't bad. There was a lot of restaurants that you could just walk down to. And because it was just kind of a city by itself, it was a lot more of like unique things. Like, it weren't as many chain things there. A lot more of just like local restaurants there, of just whatever the people had there. And, the place I ended up getting there was really nice too. It was just like a little Airbnb home, which I do have some photos of. So kind of show the gang here. It was Raito, Ozone, AK9, Wisdom, and me. And you're just going to goof around a little bit. It was fun. Or trying to like recreate the actual statues over there. And then remember one of the restaurants that I went to. So there's everybody all in total. But yeah, I'm not going to show the front end of the house just in case there's like kind of a not okay thing there. But yeah, we ended up getting like a small house where we had our own kitchen to ourselves, a lot of different setups there. And GTX did take place in a giant stadium too. So it was actually a pretty unique event overall in terms of that. I guess, you know what? It's on Airbnb, so I don't think there's any issue showing the front of the house. And yeah, that's kind of what it looks like right there. So, you know, with all of us being there, we had a lot of like room to grind. And this was the event where Raito was slated to fight Dabuz. And we're like, okay, this time we're gonna finally do it. I don't remember if I have the notes. I think it's all with Raito, but I remember we just like sat down. I talked about my different things about Rosalina, and he talked about his things. And I remember like one of the biggest things was that like I told Raito kind of had a tendency to get a little bit impatient. And I still kind of think that holds true to this day as well, like to his benefit and to his detriment. And against a Buzz, as you guys should know about him, is like he's one of the most absolute patient players. He does not mind playing the clock the second that the game starts. And I told him he needs to play with that mentality too. Like he needs to sit back, not approach, and just wait until he gets that guaranteed opening before he goes in. And I showed him like all the different ways to like place the gunman where he needs to position himself and all that stuff in order to get those openings and bait out the gravitational pull to make it sure, and just really emphasize that you need to like not rush at all. Otherwise you're going to get cheesed by rage and it's going to be terrible. You just need to focus on getting rid of Luma first. After you get that job done, then you can go in and you can go a little bit more ham, because she doesn't really have a good get off me option without Luma being there. So that's kind of like the major things that we focused on. And sure enough, why did this? It's kind of weird. Sure enough, that's what we were able to get out of this. So he was able to beat Day, which he was the best Lucario player at the time. This was before Sue made his debut, from what I remember at least. So he's the best Lucario player in America. So that was a scary match because it's kind of polar opposites. We have a hard time killing, and if Lucario's living, you die really early. So that was always a really scary match to play. It was either even or slightly in Lucario's favor. And then Dabuz able to barely clutch that out game 3. And I remember all of us there had the biggest pop-off just because like the amount of like practice and like thought we put into just beating that one set was like the entire point of GTX. We didn't care what else happened. That was the only set that we really wanted to win, just for like his psyche and for our own psyche, just to make sure that like, okay, we can beat a top 3 player as long as we put our minds through, because Dabuz was a top 3 player at this point. So that was huge. After that, he definitely like that was like the big thing. So like he kind of had like a bit of a slide off there. So like Charlie King was able to beat him there. I think all those games were really close from what I remember. And then who did he fight afterwards? Oh, actually, we did get some other ones. So Void was another big one. Raito had not beat Void until this point, so he was able to beat him there. So that was another big one. And then he lost to Zero. So unfortunately, Zero was somebody that he was never able to get the better of throughout the entirety of his career. So that's kind of always a thorn in our sides. But, you know, being able to beat Void and Dabuz, that was huge. Void was a top 8 player at this time. Dabuz was top 3 at that time. So it showed that Raito was was like good enough to beat top 8 players when he set his mind to it and when he was really, really prepared to do it. So it just kind of like solidified more of just how good of a player he was after going through this entire summer of just grinding, traveling, and just like really just improving him. While he did beat top 8 players and he lost to like the number 1 and just another really good player in general, but like of course like not top 3, you know, he did end up getting 13th at this event. So while not great, it still wasn't bad as well. So overall, because of that, you know, we were able to solidify Duck Hunt is good enough to compete with the best of the best in this game. And it really showed that, like, as long as he was able to travel, the only way that he could really go for is, like, just go from here is just keep going up. And that was kind of, like, the entirety that we were focused on from here on out. Last thing that we'll talk about real quick, just because, while it wasn't significant, in terms of just, like, fun things to happen with the Duck Hunt Discord, we'll talk briefly about SmashCon. SmashCon, was a very fun event. We were able to put together a very big group of Duck Hunt players here. So I'll show off the one photo that we got from this. So SmashCon, we were able to get Dandy Penguin. We were able to get Afro there, Stay, XPay or Ray, as you guys know him from the Duck Hunt Discord. Oh, it was Adachi. He was a Luigi Duck Hunt co-main. I don't know who he plays anymore, and then me as well. So we were able to get all of us over to SmashCon. So really successful in terms of show up there. But unfortunately, Dandy Ping was the only one that made it out of pools. I was really close to making out of mine from loser side, and I don't think the rest of them really got far. Like I think Ray went like 0-2. Adachi I think was really close to making out of his, because like he was like PR'd in his region. And then, let's see. And yeah, I think that was like mostly it that was there. As you can see, Danny made it out there. I'll check bracket real quick. Oh, it only does the top 24. Let's see. So I think phase 1, I can just see who made it out. As long as they say Dandy in the front. Oh, there he is. Yeah, it's like, I don't think he beat anybody significant here. So Sunita was a pretty good one. That was a really good Sonic player. And then, lost to Tweak. And then, yeah, I lost to Luthai. So unfortunately, like, no real major wins there. But, overall, was a good performance for the American Duck Hunts. And it was, well, it wasn't his last one. That was basically a good final performance for him for majors. Like, he would go to Super Famicom, but I think that was like a C-tier event. And unfortunately, this is like really the last way we've seen Danny Pink one since then. He did have like health issues later on. So we did, I remember his region did like a cancer drive for him. And luckily, he was able to live from the whole experience as well. He hasn't gone to any events since then, from what I know. Maybe some locals, but unfortunately, I haven't really kept up to date. I haven't really talked to him too much, so I really need to do that at some point. But yeah, basically with SmashCon, it was just a really nice Duck Hunt Discord event, which this was something that we did a lot back in Smash 4. I would post like, hey, this is going to be the next event that I'm going to be going at, and I want to get a Duck Hunt house going. So obviously, if we could get the Japanese players to come when they were free and able to, we would invite them over, and then everybody would come together, grind, and just have a good time, go out, eat a nice, like a lot of fun restaurants, and just have a good time with each other, and depending on how long everybody could stay. Which, that's something that I want to do with Ultimate again. It's just that it's been a bit harder to really get things started just because of where I'm at in my life. Obviously, since the whole pandemic is happening right now, we can't do that for very obvious reasons. But I do want to get that started again in the future, just because like it was really nice to get everybody grinding on the meta. We could actually help out each other in person instead of just like online. Which that's always really good too. It's like, I can give you advice in VOD, like off of VODs over here right now, but like I can play you in person and I can tell you, like, okay, these are the events, these are the things that are happening right here. If you need emotional support coaching as well, it's another thing that I can do as well in person. So there's just like a lot of different things that can happen doing there. And it's just, the more that you build the bond, the more that you build like a physical in-person community, the better that's going to translate online too. So if you guys happen to be from another Discord server, like you're a mod or you're an owner, because I know I've had a couple of people that follow me from that stuff, that's honestly the best thing that you can do for your community. If you want to really build something that's going to support each other, you need to do in-person events. That's really the only way that you're going to do it. Like JMUs, people are just going to mess around, not really take it too seriously, and that's really going to be it. But when people like have to physically bring themselves somewhere and they have to present themselves in person, that's an entirely different experience versus just me and you talking over the internet. So that's kind of the main reason why I'll always strive for people to do things like that. It builds a different sense of camaraderie too, and just people are able to learn a lot more from each other. And you might have some people where it's like they're not comfortable going out to their locals, but they may be comfortable going out to tournaments where you're there, for example. So if you do happen to find that your community has a lot of people like that, all the more reason why to organize things like that, because they might feel more comfortable to go out to their local. They might feel more comfortable going to these tournaments as well and playing, where it's like they might have friendly people, but as long as you have your close friends there and everything, it may be a lot easier for them to perform, and they might be able to do some amazing things as well. And that's kind of one of the biggest things. Like the thing to remember with all of these events, like if you go to like those 2GG ones specifically, the reason why Raito was able to go there was specifically through community-funded compendiums, which I can actually show that off right now. I'm pretty sure Arm Saga had something for that. Let's go to Gift Shop. View all goals. Because like whenever there was like a Team Japan thing, I pretty much always helped them out with that. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I remember I helped them out. This is to get them both to Evo and Arm Saga. So basically, they were in contact with a lot of these players, but then like I helped get Rido and some other people on there and just like help organize things with that. I think Nairo Saga was the one that I helped a bit more with though. Actually, yeah, this was the one that I helped out with more. So I'll go to the shop real quick, kind of show off more. Kind of sucks that I have to keep going to this one specifically, but let me talk a little bit about the donation drives that I did. Help continue the Brawl documentary. Oh boy. Well, that never got further, so appropriate at the very least. Let's see. Actually, okay, this might be weird. It might have been I think it might have been a CEO. It might have been a CEO reward. Okay, yeah, here it is. So what happened was we wanted to get these players. 2GG contacted me to help get these players over to CEO, and then I was like, hey, you know, if you want to help get Rido to this event and Nairo Saga, put him on here as well. And that's what happened. So because of like me talking to them and to get them to support this in total, I was able to get him to both Nairo Saga and CEO. And what I had to do for them was I had to help coordinate the housing for all the Japanese players over at for CEO. So for this event, the Duck and House was, I think Rido stayed with us. But, you know, Ken, Como, Abadango, Ranai, and Kameme, they were all staying at this one place that I got for them. And I would help get them back and forth between there and between their place and CEO. And the funny thing was, like, I was completely sleep deprived during this entire event, just because, like, you know, I had to do so many things between getting them from to the event and back and from the airports because they came at ungodly hours. That was, I think, the best that I did, because like I think in terms of entrance wise, I think that was the best that I ever did at an event. I was like really close to making it out of my pool there, and then I ended up losing to Zaltis and like a game 3 scenario. I think it's game 3 or game 5. It's one or the other. I forgot if it was a best or 3 or 5. So yeah, no, that was actually a lot of fun, and I remember I was always surprised with how well I did at the event. That was the event that I was expected to go 0-2 because like I was not a functioning human being when I was playing in bracket at that point. So that's kind of how like I got more involved with the Japanese community there. So not all of them remember me. Like Abadango recognizes me. Renai surprisingly recognized me. I remember this is kind of a tangent from everything else going on. So I remember the first time I went to Japan. So it was right when Ultimate came out, which was in January. I went to Sumabato, and if you don't know, Ranai is one of the play testers for Smash Ultimate. So he has permanently banned himself from entering any event. So in Japan, you'll never see him enter an event. If you ever see him play, it's going to be like randomly on some friend's stream, or you're going to randomly play friendlies with him. That's it. He's never going to be in a tournament. You're never going to see it on stream. And one thing that's really nice that Sumabato had is the way that they do friendlies there is they have like these chairs that you sit in, and it's basically a line. And what happens is the entire back wall was set up for friendlies, and the rule was this: you and the person that you want to play with, or the person you're next to, go to a setup, you do one game, and then you play it, and then you leave and you get back in line if you want to do more friendlies. So that way everybody there is able to get like their friendlies in, they're able to warm up, and they're able to play a lot of different people, and it moves very, very efficiently. It's like you had 10 setups there, guaranteed like almost one was like finishing like every minute or so. So you're just able to move people through that thing like extremely fast. And, you know, he was wearing a mask at the time, so I didn't recognize him. And he was like, hey, do you remember me? And then like when he put his tag as Ranai, he was like, wait, what? Hey! So that was kind of neat. So, you know, like when they were with me there, it's like I took them out to eat at a lot of different places and all that stuff there. So I did spend a lot of time with them. So that's kind of how they recognize me. And then, you know, Abadango goes to a lot of events just like Rido. So I always say hi to him whenever we end up going to the same places for the most part. I haven't said hi to him too often recently. But yeah, no, it's like if you do want to get involved with like a lot of international things, the first step is always just contact them. If they don't message you back, don't take it as any offense. Like every person is very different, and there's a lot of players that can just be very timid, especially if they're not used to going out to events too. So, you know, that'll always be a barrier. Language can always be a barrier too. I know I showed this off in my Japanese learning video, but if you are interested in like talking with Japanese players, deepl.com, highly recommend using this website. This is the absolute best translator that I have ever used for Japanese. So if you don't know Japanese yourself, that website's going to carry you through quite a bit. They also have something that you can do where you can install it on your browser, and if you watch Netflix, it'll automatically translate things for you. So really useful thing to have. And like there's like all these pause functions too. But yeah, so kind of going to go back over the year of 2017 from Dreamland to GTX. So at this point, Raito was beating top 20 players pretty consistently. And he was mostly losing just to like the top 15 players. And that was kind of what was gatekeeping him from the top 8s in Smash 4. So was playing really consistently, basically kept on grinding more and more throughout the entirety of 2017, would pretty much consistently get like 13th and 17th. And that was kind of his curse for a while. He just could not break that barrier. But we were finally able to break the threshold of beating those top 10 players by beating Void, beating Mr. R, and then beating Dabuz, which was the first time that he ever took a set off of a top 3 player, who was somebody that consistently gatekept him in 2017. First at CEO Dreamland, then at CEO, and then finally we were able to beat him at GTX. And that was a big moment for us, because like I was like, okay, Raito is now fully capable of beating anybody in the entirety of Smash 4. Duck Hunt can do it. And at this time, like, he was just a solo Duck Hunt main, did not use any other characters. And the year before, people were saying Duck Hunt was either the worst character or bottom 5. So it was just like a huge change around, and it basically completely shifted everybody's perspective. We still had a lot of doubters, especially like on the Reddits and everything. But like top players at this point by the end of GTX were like, okay, we need to take him seriously. Because like he's just out there beating up everybody. And while it was really hard for them to learn the matchup, there was a couple of players that ended up flying to Japan. Obviously Zero is one of the big ones that did that, and a couple of the other ones too were able to get out there, get some training, and then obviously they did hit up some of the US Duck Hunts for training. Like I remember Dabuz would start hitting up Ozone, so they played a couple of times, and then I think Wisdom would get hit up every now and then too. And yeah, that was kind of like the one thing that was funny. None of them ever tried to come to the Duck Hunt Discord to get help. So it's like everybody would just go there and they would just randomly ask for help from anybody that they knew was a Duck Hunt right at the event itself. And we're just like, you know, sorry, you should have just prepared beforehand. Looking back on it, it was kind of like more of just like a BM thing to do. And I really think like if I had the chance to do it again, I would probably help them a bit more and just be like, hey, Raito, I'm be playing with these people. If you want to watch, this is what's going on. Just so it's like we could really just push the matchup to its fullest by the end of the game cycle there. So that's kind of it for this one. Again, this was very much a middle of the road type deal here. This is where this is basically the start of me sponsoring Raito for the most part, and the entirety of the Duck Hunt community helping just make that goal happen. That's like I have to like really emphasize. While there were times where Raito was on the compendium with all these other Japanese players, you know, the good thing is all those players are really popular, so people would chip in to help donate and get those players out to these events. But like really, there was a large portion of the event that happened because of all of us just like mobilizing the Duck Hunt Discord community together to help like donate funds to it, but also just get out there and help advertise, upload things on Reddit, retweet on Twitter. I remember Paradin was also a big help with that as well, and a bunch of other top players I reach out to. Like they would just like help retweet all these things. So it's like, if you're really dedicated and you really want to get these things going, you got to be very comfortable with getting yourself out there on social media and really just make sure you have a platform that's going to back you up. And that's really what we did with the Duck Hunt community. We wanted to see what this character could do, and we made sure that every community member that we had would do their best to just contribute to just like help just spread the message everywhere as much as we possibly could and contribute as much of our funds as we possibly could to make this happen. And as you saw, we had a very successful 2017. We were able to get really good results with this character, get a lot of really, really good ones with this character as well. And we were able to just get a lot of footage out of this. Like if you go on YouTube, for example, you'll find a lot of footage just thanks to all the mobilization we did with the Duck Hunt Discord. So if there's any player that you know that's having a hard time traveling and like you really believe in them and your community believes in them, do everything that you can to get them out there. Just try to organize what you can, and you know, you can get things like this done. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this segment of Smash Stories. This was definitely way more tangenty, kind of all over the place, but it's just very much the middle of the road. But the Dabuz storyline really was the biggest thing out here. To kind of like craft down more things of what happened, I'd have to go back and watch the videos themselves, and I'd have to talk to Raito a little bit more in depth to figure out what was exactly going on there, because he does have all his notes. I can't imagine he's gotten rid of them, so we might be able to go back and like pick at those and try to really figure out more what was going on. But hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you would like to see me talk about more in the future from these things. I'm going to continue going over the Duck Hunt story afterwards, and I think the next one is going to be the last part on Smash 4, as Dabuz was really like the last big hurdle we had, and then after that was trying to get top 8 at an event. That was the main thing we were concerned about after this one hurdle happened, and we kind of had a lot of things standardized at this point. So I think that's going to do it here. Once again, hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to more Duck Hunt content coming in the future, and until then, take care of yourselves. Until the next one.